global multi-billion-dollar business. You've got tens of thousands of employees scattered across like dozens of countries, right?
A massive logistical operation.
Exactly. And today, you're going to call an all-hands meeting. And you look at your lowest paid entry-level workers, I mean, the people washing dishes, folding laundry, sweeping the lobby.
Okay.
And you hand every single one of them $2,000 of company money. And you look them right in the eye and say they can spend that money however they want on any customer at any time, just to solve a problem or make that customer smile.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the absolute kicker, they never have to ask your permission to do it.
See, if you are like most traditional managers or business owners listening right now, you are probably having a mild panic attack. I mean, handing over that kind of untethered financial discretion.
It sounds like corporate suicide, honestly.
Exactly. We are taught that giving financial power at the lowest levels of an organization is just, well, a recipe for absolute chaos.
Sure.
The immediate assumption is that within a week, your company will be bankrupt.
Right. You hand over the keys to the vault and just hope human nature doesn't, kick in. But what I told you that this exact policy isn't some theoretical experiment. It is a very real daily operating standard.
It really is.
And rather than bankrupting the company, it actually serves as the primary engine for generating tens of millions of dollars in like fiercely loyal incremental revenue.
And that is the paradox we are looking at today. We are exploring the deep architecture of one of the most studied service cultures on the planet. Our source material is Joseph Michelli's book, The New Gold Standard.
Specifically looking at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company.
Yes. We're going to look at the mechanics of moving a business from a cold, purely transactional model to a deeply relationship-based model. It's really a masterclass in organizational psychology.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how a massive modern corporation executes that level of radical trust today, we actually have to rewind over a century. The entire philosophy traces back to a herdsman's son from a family of 13 in the Swiss Alps.
Right, a guy named Caesar Ritz.
Yeah, Caesar Ritz.
And Caesar Ritz is a fascinating psychological study in determination because his early career was a spectacular failure. I mean, he started working in hospitality in his teens, and he was actually fired from an apprenticeship.
Wait, really? Fired?
Fired. The patron of the hotel explicitly told him, "You will never make anything of yourself in the hotel business. It takes a special flair, and you haven't got a trace of it."
That is just brutal. I mean, the man who literally invented the concept of modern luxury, whose actual last name became an English adjective for high class, like ritzy, was told he lacked the basic aptitude for the job.
It's wild, right? But that rejection seemed to forge his obsession. When he eventually made his way to Paris and London, managing properties like the Savoy, he didn't just want to provide a bed for the night. He wanted to engineer an experience.
Like what kind of experience?
Well, he introduced concepts that seem totally basic to us now, but were revolutionary at the time. Things like en-suite bathrooms, indirect lighting to make guests look better, a la carte dining instead of those rigid preset menus.
So he was obsessively tailoring the physical environment to the psychological comfort of the individual.
Exactly. He was a micromanager in the best sense of the word.
But, I mean, the mission for us today, and for you listening, whether you are leading a corporate sales team, running a local coffee shop, or managing a hospital wing, it isn't just a history lesson on Caesar Ritz.
Right. It's about application.
Exactly. It's about scaling. It is one thing for an obsessive, brilliant founder to deliver incredible bespoke service when they are physically standing in the room, micromanaging every interaction.
That's exactly the problem of founder syndrome. When the founder goes to sleep or, leaves the building, the quality just plummets.
Right. So how do you take Caesar Ritz's obsessive standard and guarantee it across international borders, across different cultures, and across a workforce of tens of thousands of people who will never meet the founder? You can't just rely on a charismatic personality. You have to build a machine.
You really do. You need a bedrock foundation.
In organizational psychology, that foundation is an explicitly defined culture. And Ritz-Carlton formalized this into what they call their gold standards. The core of this architecture rests on the credo and the 3 steps of service.
Let's look at those 3 steps, actually, because on paper, they sound almost disappointingly basic.
Mm-hmm.
Step 1, a warm and sincere greeting using the guest's name.
Mm-hmm.
Step 2, anticipation and fulfillment of each guest's needs. And step 3, a fond farewell using the guest's name. I read that and thought, well, yeah, that's just standard manners. Any fast food drive-thru tries to do that. They do try. But the words are basic. The execution under extreme duress is what separates a platitudes from a standard.
Extreme duress, like
To understand the difference, the sources detail a defining moment during Hurricane Wilma in 2005. The storm scored a direct, devastating hit on Cancun, Mexico.
Oh, wow. And this wasn't just a minor power outage either. This was a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane. I mean, the infrastructure was entirely compromised. The hotel itself was severely battered. No electricity, resources vanishing. It became incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, they had to execute emergency evacuation of the guests. So imagine the chaos of that scene. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's pitch black.
Terrifying.
Guests are terrified, exhausted, totally confused. The staff are physically loading people onto buses to flee a natural disaster. And yet, in the middle of that terrifying night, the staff of the hotel gathered together by the buses to physically wave goodbye to every single departing guest.
They actually stayed to execute step 3, a fond farewell.
Precisely. Keep in mind, these employees are human beings living in Cancun. Their own homes were likely destroyed. They probably hadn't even been able to check on their own families.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Yet, the foundational culture held so firmly that they didn't just scatter to the wind the moment the emergency hit. That behavior tells you that the 3 steps of service are not just some corporate script laminated on a break room wall.
Right.
They have been internalized as a fundamental moral duty to the person standing right in front of them.
But how do you get an employee to internalize a corporate mandate so deeply that they prioritize it during a hurricane? I mean, there has to be a psychological mechanism at play that shifts an employee from feeling like a subservient worker to a dedicated protector of the guests.
Oh, absolutely. And that shift is engineered through their motto, which is arguably the most brilliant piece of linguistic programming in modern business. It is only 7 words long.
Which is?
Ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen.
What's fascinating here is how violently that clashes with the traditional hierarchy of the service industry. I mean, for centuries, hospitality has been defined by a master-servant dynamic, right?
Yes, totally.
You have the wealthy patron who holds all the economic power, and you have the subservient worker who is just paid to absorb whatever demands the patron throws at them. It's almost like a modern code of chivalry they're trying to implement. It's not about groveling, it's about claiming your own dignity.
Exactly. This motto actively dismantles that class divide. By calling the employees ladies and gentlemen, the company is elevating the status of the worker to be an absolute peer to the guest. It replaces subservience with a peer-to-peer relationship built on mutual professional respect.
Okay, practically speaking, doesn't that create a nightmare for management? Let's be real here. If a guest is paying over $1,000 a night for a suite, they often expect a certain level of subservience. They want to be treated like royalty. How do you actually enforce peer-to-peer respect without offending or losing your most high-paying, demanding clients?
That is the ultimate test of whether leadership actually believes their own motto. The sources confirm that this model functions as a two-way street.
Yeah.
If you are a lady or a gentleman, you provide flawless anticipatory service.
Right.
But you also expect to be treated with human dignity in return.
Yeah.
If a guest crosses the line, if they become verbally abusive, aggressive, or deeply disrespectful to a staff member, leadership will intervene.
They don't just comp the guest's room and apologize to smooth it over.
No, they don't. Management will approach the abusive guest and say very calmly, "We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and we expect to be addressed as such."
Wow.
And if the guest refuses to adjust their behavior, the hotel will actually invite them to stay somewhere else. They will pack their bags and help them make a reservation at a competitor's hotel down the street.
So they will fire a highly lucrative customer just to protect the dignity of an hourly employee.
They absolutely will. And think about the message that sends to the staff. When a frontline worker sees the general manager willingly lose money to protect them from abuse, the psychological safety and trust that generates is just immeasurable.
Right. The employee realizes, oh, I am not a disposable cog. I am a valued professional.
Exactly. That is how you build the kind of loyalty that keeps staff waving goodbye during a hurricane.
So, to make sure no one ever forgets these standards, they turn them into a physical artifact. The credo, the motto, the 3 steps of service, they aren't buried on page 47 of some onboarding PDF that you skim once and immediately delete.
No, not at all.
They are printed on a physical trifold pocket card known as the credo card. And carrying this card is a mandatory part of every single employee's uniform worldwide. If you are the CEO, the head chef, or the valet, you have that card physically touching your body while you work.
It serves as a tactile anchor. In cognitive psychology, grounding an abstract concept in a physical object makes it infinitely more salient. But we have to introduce a massive caveat here. Any behavioral analyst will tell you that physical proximity to a rule does not guarantee adherence to that rule.
Right. I mean, I have a gym membership card in my wallet right now, and I haven't been to the gym in 4 months.
Yeah.
Carrying the card definitely doesn't make me fit.
Exactly. This brings us to a fundamental problem in human psychology, the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve.
Ah, Ebbinghaus.
Yeah. In the late 19th century, Hermann Ebbinghaus proved that humans exponentially lose the memory of learned information over time unless that information is consciously reviewed. If an employee learns the gold standards on day one, human nature dictates they will start forgetting and compromising those standards by day 10.
So the values on that Credo card will naturally gather dust and just become a meaningless routine. So because of this psychological decay, a mechanism is required to combat it. You have to force the memory back to the top of the brain. And for Ritz-Carlton, that mechanism is a ritual called the daily lineup.
Yes, the lineup. It's a mandatory 15 to 20-minute meeting that occurs at the start of every single shift across every single department in every hotel on the globe. The agenda is tightly orchestrated.
What do they actually do in it?
They physically take out the Credo card, they recite the specific standard of the day, they share motivational thought, and they share wild stories.
Wait, let me stop you because I have to push back hard on this. I understand the forgetting curve, but put yourself in the shoes of a line cook or a housekeeper. You are tired, your commute was awful, you just want to punch the clock, grab your coffee, and start your shift.
Sure.
Instead, you are forced to stand in a circle with your coworkers and recite a corporate mandate like a Pledge of Allegiance every single day. Doesn't that border on cult-like indoctrination? Doesn't it just breed massive cynicism among the staff?
It is a completely rational skepticism. The immediate reaction to repetitive corporate rituals is almost always cynicism. But the lineage of this practice actually diffuses a lot of that friction.
How so?
Well, the daily lineup was not invented in a sterile corporate boardroom by HR executives trying to brainwash employees. It was adapted from the culinary world.
Oh, like a kitchen brigade.
Yes, Auguste Escoffier's traditional brigade system. Think about the chef's pre-service huddle, the moment right before the dinner rush where the entire kitchen staff gathers around the pass.
Right, where the executive chef explains the specials, points out a VIP at table 4, warns them that the fish is cooking faster than usual today.
Exactly. Ensuring the entire team is on the exact same page. Ritz-Carlton took that highly functional operational alignment and simply applied it to cultural alignment.
So instead of tasting the soup of the day, they are tasting the cultural value of the day.
Correct. But to address your point about it feeling like top-down cult-like indoctrination, what prevents that cynicism is the absolute lack of hierarchy in the participation.
Meaning everyone does it.
Everyone. It's not just the frontline staff standing in these circles being lectured by middle management. The global executive team, including the president of the company at corporate headquarters, participates in the exact same daily lineup, reading the exact same material at the exact same time.
So the president is literally standing in a circle reciting the same card as the busboy.
Yes. It obliterates corporate silos. It creates a shared, synchronous heartbeat across a global enterprise.
Yeah.
But the real fuel that makes the lineup work isn't just reciting rules. It is the wow stories.
Let's talk about those, because this is where the psychology of storytelling really comes in. A wow story is a documented example of a staff member somewhere in the world delivering legendary service.
Right.
So during the lineup, a housekeeper in Tokyo might hear a story about a maintenance engineer in London doing something completely extraordinary for a guest.
And humans are hardwired for narrative, not directives. If you just tell a team, be empathetic, it goes in one ear and out the other. But if you tell them a story of a peer displaying radical empathy, it builds a global folklore. It provides social proof. It shows the staff in Tokyo that the abstract values printed on their card are actually alive, being practiced, and being celebrated by their peers in London.
But here is the fatal flaw in all of this. You can have the most beautifully designed pocket cards. You can mandate the daily lineup. You can tell the most inspiring stories. But if you have the wrong human being standing in that circle, none of it matters. A toxic, apathetic employee is immune to a daily lineup.
Which pivots the entire conversation from how to manage a culture to how you build the pipeline that feeds that culture. The sources make a tremendously sharp linguistic distinction regarding talent acquisition. Ritz-Carlton does not hire people, they select them.
Okay, most managers listening to this are probably rolling their eyes right now, thinking that is just semantic corporate jargon. Hiring, selecting, recruiting, it's all the same thing, right?
It is a fundamentally different operational posture. Hiring is reactive. A company has a vacancy, The manager is feeling the acute pain of being short-staffed, the team is overworked, and the goal is to find a warm body with the requisite technical skills to plug the hole as fast as possible.
Right, like we need a bartender by Friday or we are completely doomed.
Exactly. You have a pulse and a resume. You're hired. Selection, on the other hand, is a proactive, deeply psychological process. Ritz-Carlton operates on the belief that you can easily teach technical skills.
Sure, you can train someone to carry a tray of champagne glasses.
Yes, or teach them the software to check a guest in or how to fold a towel. But you cannot teach an adult to genuinely care about the emotional well-being of a stranger. You cannot train innate warmth.
So you are looking for a baseline psychological trait, not just a resume bullet point.
They are hunting for an innate aptitude for service. And the vetting process to find that aptitude is staggeringly rigorous. The sources mentioned that a general manager might go through up to 14 separate interviews before being selected.
14. Wait, let's pause and think about the sheer cost of that. The man hours required for 14 interviews. As a business owner, I am bleeding money leaving that position open, and I am burning executive time conducting endless interviews. Why on earth would they stretch it out that long?
Because they have calculated the true cost of a bad hire, which honestly dwarfs the cost of an empty chair. A toxic general manager won't just perform poorly. They will actively destroy the culture, drive away your top performing staff, and alienate loyal customers.
That's a fair point.
To avoid that, the interviews aren't just casual conversations. They utilize scientific behavioral assessments.
The sources specifically mention a tool called Talent Plus.
Yes. They use these psychometric tools to objectively measure a candidate's naturally occurring patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior. They are testing for empathy, detail orientation, and ego drive.
What kind of questions do they ask?
They ask highly specific situational questions designed to reveal whether a person gets intrinsic joy from serving others, or if they just view it as a transactional chore. This requires immense discipline from local managers who are desperate to fill a shift, forcing them to wait for the right talent rather than yielding to the available talent.
But let's say you survive the gauntlet. You make it through the behavioral assessments, you are officially selected, and you show up for your first day. Most companies sit you in a windowless room, hand you a stack of tax forms, make you watch a terrifying safety video from the 1990s, and then throw you on the floor.
Sure.
Ritz-Carlton does the exact opposite. For the first 2 days of orientation, new employees are explicitly forbidden from doing any actual work.
Instead, they are treated as VIP guests. They dine in the fine dining restaurants on the property.
Yeah.
They're personally welcomed by the highest ranking executives of the hotel.
But why spend the money to wine and dine a new employee?
Because on day one, the company has to prove that the motto is real. Ladies and gentlemen, if you expect your staff to deliver a complex, anticipatory luxury experience to your customers, you first have to let them feel what that experience is like from the receiving end.
You are setting the physiological and psychological baseline for what good feels like.
Precisely.
Because you can't expect someone to deliver a Michelin star experience if they've only ever eaten fast food.
Exactly. But the brilliance of their talent factory doesn't end when orientation is over. The onboarding process is highly structured around two very specific chronological checkpoints, day 21 and day 365.
The day 21 check-in fascinated me. Why 21 days? Why not 30 or 90?
It is rooted in a highly concerning labor metric. Research indicates that approximately 90% of employees make the internal, often subconscious decision about whether they are going to stay with a company long-term or eventually leave within their first 6 months.
90%. That means almost your entire workforce has decided their future with you before they even finish their probationary period.
It is a staggering window of vulnerability. Think about the psychology of starting a new job. There is a honeymoon phase. You are excited. The company is on its best behavior. But by day 21, cognitive dissonance begins to set in. The honeymoon is over.
Yeah, reality hits.
By 3 weeks in, the new hire has seen the ugly realities of the job. They know if their trainer was actually helpful or just impatient. They know if the software crashes. Most importantly, they know if the pristine culture promised during orientation is actually practiced on the floor or if it was all a lie.
So by day 21, the minor annoyances are starting to calcify into resentment.
Right. If you wait for an annual review to address those issues, it is far too late. The employee is already disengaged or looking for another job. So on day 21, Ritz-Carlton halts everything and pulls the new hires back in for a formal, safe forum.
What happens in the forum?
It is a dedicated space explicitly designed to surface friction. They ask, what tools are you missing? What isn't working the way we promised? Where are you frustrated?
It's an intervention. You are catching the infection before it turns into full-blown sepsis. And then if they survive that and make it to day 365, the 1 year anniversary, it isn't just an automated email from HR saying happy anniversary.
No, it is a formalized celebration, but it's also a strategic recalibration. They honor the employee's tenure, which validates their choice to stay, but they also use the moment to reinvest in their professional development, realigning them with the core values before they can become complacent.
Okay, so let's summarize the architecture so far. You have an ironclad foundation of values. You have a daily ritual to combat human forgetfulness. You have a scientifically rigorous selection process and an onboarding system designed to catch resentment before it breeds.
That's pretty solid, right?
You would think a company with all of that in place is bulletproof.
You would think so. But the market refuses to stand still. Customer demographics shift. Cultural expectations of what constitutes luxury evolve. And the hallmark of a truly great, enduring organization is possessing the self-awareness to recognize when its own sacred, highly successful rules have become obsolete.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Ritz-Carlton actually fell into a very dangerous trap of their own making. For a long time, their daily operations were governed by something called the 20 basics.
Right, the 20 basics.
These were highly prescriptive, rigid rules about exactly how an employee should interact with a guest. And for a specific era of old world luxury, they worked brilliantly. But eventually, they began to backfire.
They backfire because rigid rules strip an intelligent workforce of their intuition. The 20 basics dictated specific phrasing and specific physical actions. For instance, staff were essentially mandated to use the phrase "my pleasure" in response to any guest request.
We have all experienced this. Think about the last time you called a major customer service hotline, maybe for your internet provider. You are angry, your internet is down, and you can literally hear the representative reading an empathy script.
Yes.
I understand this is a frustrating situation for you today, sir. It actually makes you angrier because it is robotic. It lacks human intuition. That is the trap Ritz-Carlton fell into. You ask a bellhop for a napkin. My pleasure. You ask for directions. My pleasure. You say it's raining outside. My pleasure.
It starts sounding like you are interacting with a malfunctioning android.
Exactly.
It becomes a verbal demit rather than an expression of hospitality. Another prime example of the 20 basics failing was a strict rule that staff must physically escort guests to their destination within the hotel rather than just pointing the way.
Which stems from a good place. Pointing a finger seems rude, so you walk them there.
In theory, yes. But play that out in reality. Imagine a modern, highly stressed business traveler. They are 10 minutes late for a conference. They are rushing through the lobby, and they ask a passing employee, quick, where's the restroom?
Right. All they want is a fast directional point.
Instead, the employee, strictly adhering to the 20 basics, says, my pleasure, please follow me, and begins awkwardly shadowing the frantic guest down the hallway.
Oh, man. The employee is flawlessly executing the rule, but they are utterly failing the customer. They failed to read the guest's actual desire for speed and autonomy.
Exactly. So leadership realized that the architecture was suffocating the empathy. The president of the company at the time, Simon Cooper, recognized this. But he didn't just lock himself in a boardroom and write a new manual.
What did he do?
He went on a massive global listening tour. He personally ran focus groups with roughly 17,000 employees. He went to the frontline workers and asked, what is actually working? And what rules are preventing you from doing your job?
And out of that massive 17,000 person feedback loop, they made a radical decision. They completely scrapped the legendary 20 basics. They threw them out.
They replaced them with the 12 service values. And the linguistic shift here is absolutely critical for organizational design. They moved away from rigid task-based commands and shifted toward outcome-based I statements.
For example, service value number 3 is, I am empowered to create unique, memorable, and personal experiences for our guests.
The psychological power of that I is profound. It shifts the cognitive burden. Under the old rules, the burden was, am I perfectly following the script? Under the new values, the burden is, am I taking personal ownership of the guest's actual desired outcome?
It gives the staff the permission to read the room.
Exactly.
So if the guest arrives and they clearly want formal, highly deferential, old world luxury, the employee has the intuition to deliver that. But if a young couple arrives in jeans and they just want a quick, casual, friendly interaction, the employee is empowered to pivot and match that energy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this evolution from prescriptive rules to empowered intuition introduces a massive new risk. If you tell an employee to use their own judgment rather than a script, they're inevitably going to get it wrong sometimes.
Of course.
They will misread a situation. A process will break. How a company handles those inevitable mistakes dictates whether a culture of innovation survives or is instantly crushed.
Which brings us to one of the most brilliant concepts in the sources, MRBIV. MRBIV. It's an acronym that stands for mistakes, rework, breakdowns, inefficiencies, and variations. Basically, it's a personification of process failure.
It is a masterful tool for creating psychological safety. In most corporate cultures, when something goes wrong, a massive order is delayed, a client is lost. The immediate managerial instinct is to find a throat to choke. The investigation is entirely focused on finding a human being to blame and punish.
Right. Who do I fire to make myself feel better about this mistake?
But Ritz-Carlton actively flips that paradigm. They encourage their staff to actively hunt for Mr. BIV. At their Marina del Rey hotel, they even had a physical wooden statue of a character named Mr. BIV.
I love the idea of this. If a process breaks down, let's say room service is consistently running 20 minutes late. The floor staff isn't pointing fingers at the kitchen, and the kitchen isn't blaming the runners.
Not at all.
They are metaphorically pointing at the statue. They are saying, Mr. BIV is in the kitchen today.
Think about what that does psychologically. It externalizes the failure. It separates the problem from the person. It is very similar to the concept of blameless postmortems in aviation or software engineering.
Oh, right.
When an airplane crashes or a server goes down, investigators don't just say the pilot was stupid. They ask, what flaw in the dashboard design allowed a smart pilot to make a stupid mistake?
You treat the failure as a systemic flaw, not a moral failing of the employee.
Exactly. The organizational mandate is to fix the process, not to fix the blame. When you remove the fear of punitive blame, employees will actually surface inefficiencies themselves. They will raise their hand and say, hey, the way we route these luggage carts is causing a 10-minute delay, rather than sweeping the delay under the rug out of fear of being fired.
But words on a card, daily meetings, and blameless postmortems mean absolutely nothing if the employee doesn't have the actual tools to fix the problem. You can't tell an employee to own the outcome without giving them the capital to fund that outcome. Which finally brings us back to the hook of this entire deep dive, the policy that terrifies every traditional manager.
The $2,000 empowerment rule.
Let's lay out the exact parameters of this because it bears repeating. Every single employee, the housekeeper, the bellhop, the laundry attendant, the person watering the plants can spend up to $2,000 per guest per day to resolve an issue or enhance a guest's experience.
That's right.
And they can swipe the company card without ever picking up a phone to ask a manager for permission.
Untethered, localized financial discretion.
I'm going to represent the listener here who manages a P&L sheet. Let me stop you because I'm stuck on the math. If I have 500 hourly employees in my building, and I give them all a $2,000 daily discretionary budget, my financial exposure is apocalyptic.
That is what everyone thinks.
Doesn't this lead to rampant waste? Won't an employee just start comping rooms and handing out free champagne every time a guest looks slightly annoyed just to avoid dealing with the conflict?
That is the logical assumption of a scarcity mindset. But it fundamentally misunderstands the behavioral economics of trust. The data and the decades of experience at Ritz-Carlton prove that the exact opposite happens.
Really? The opposite?
Yes. This is known as the paradox of trust, and it ties into agency theory. When you grant an employee radical financial authority, you are no longer treating them like a disposable cog. You are treating them like a stakeholder. You are giving them the psychological weight of an owner.
And people don't vandalize their own homes.
Precisely. When people feel like true owners of a business, they become more fiscally responsible, not less. They do not throw money at problems indiscriminately because they feel a protective stewardship over the resources. The $2,000 is almost never used as a first resort. It operates as a safety net.
It allows the employee to use their creativity and empathy first. But if money is required, they can instantly bypass the bureaucratic chain of command. Because if a guest is standing in front of you furious that their suit was ruined, and you have to say, let me go find my manager, who has to email the director of finance.
Guests' anger multiplies by the minute. The speed of the resolution is often what creates the wow moment. You can only achieve that speed by obliterating the middle management bottleneck.
The sources are packed with specific wow stories that illustrate how this actually plays out on the ground. And what's wild is that they almost never come close to spending the full $2,000. The expenditures are usually small, but highly empathetic. Take the story of the family staying at the hotel with the child who was severely lactose intolerant.
A classic example of anticipatory service.
The family is at the hotel restaurant, the child wants dessert, but the restaurant didn't have any dairy-free ice cream options on the menu. The child is obviously disappointed.
Naturally.
Now, a standard waiter would say, "I'm so sorry, let me offer you a fruit plate instead." That's standard good service. But this server used their empowerment. They literally left the property during their shift, went to a local grocery store, and bought a carton of rice stream ice cream specifically for that kid.
Think about the cost benefit analysis there. The financial cost of the hotel was maybe $5 or $6 for the ice cream. But what is the impact on those parents?
You have secured a customer for life. They will never stay anywhere else. Or consider the story of the lost ring. A guest loses an incredibly valuable ring and they panic, thinking it might have been scooped up with the hotel linens when the room was cleaned.
In most hotels, the laundry staff might casually sift through the immediate hamper, shrug, and tell security it's gone.
But the Ritz-Carlton laundry staff didn't just do a visual check. They took extreme ownership. They went into the massive industrial laundry facility, physically disassembled the plumbing of one of the massive washing machines, climbed into the infrastructure, and searched the drain catchment area until they found the ring.
Wow. And that level of extreme physical effort isn't about spending $2,000. It is about an employee knowing that the company trusts them implicitly, which motivates them to do absolutely whatever it takes to solve the problem. The financial empowerment creates a culture of psychological empowerment.
But those are stories about fixing standard hotel problems, food and lost items. I want to spend a few minutes on a story from the Dearborn Hotel in Michigan because it elevates this entire concept from a business tactic to a profound display of human decency. It involves a 12-year-old girl named Natalie.
It is arguably the most emotional example of corporate empathy in the entire source material.
Natalie was a champion young figure skater. Tragically, she was diagnosed with a severe, aggressive form of cancer. Despite treatments, the doctors informed her family that the cancer was terminal and Natalie was not going to survive.
It's just heartbreaking.
As the reality set in, one of Natalie's biggest regrets, expressing the heartbreak of a young girl, was that she was never going to live long enough to attend a high school prom.
Through a mutual connection in the community, the human resources director at the Ritz-Carlton Dearborn heard about Natalie's situation and her unfulfilled wish.
The moment the staff heard this, they didn't ask corporate for a charity budget. They mobilized entirely on their own initiative. The entire staff of the hotel decided to throw a full, spectacular prom for this 12-year-old girl right there in the hotel ballroom.
They utilized their empowerment and their cross-departmental resources to engineer an unforgettable night.
And the sensory details of what they pulled off are staggering. The convention setup team went into the ballroom, built a massive dance floor, and set up professional pin lighting to make it look like a fairy tale. The hotel's audio-visual technician volunteered to act as the club DJ for the night. The IT guy brought his camera equipment and became the official event photographer. They rolled out a literal red carpet at the entrance for her.
And the culinary team catered the entire event with all of her favorite foods, which, being a 12-year-old, meant piles of salami, cheese, and a massive amount of ice cream.
A seamstress on the hotel staff even stepped in to help tailor and fit the prom dress for Natalie. They created this perfectly magical, dignified night for Natalie, her family, and her friends, entirely driven by the staff's autonomous empathy.
Natalie passed away shortly after that event. The profound postscript to that story is that the hotel seamstress who helped fit her for the prom dress actually made the dress that Natalie's was buried in.
It is incredibly moving. It completely shatters the barrier between a business transaction and human connection. It proves that when you empower human beings to care for one another and you remove the bureaucratic red tape, they are capable of astonishing acts of grace.
It illustrates a truth that transcends standard business metrics. However, this is an analysis of business strategy, and we have to address the cynical executives who might look at a story like Natalie's or the rice stream and say, that is a beautiful human interest story, but I run a corporation. Is empathy actually profitable?
Yes, let's tie this profound human emotion directly back to the bottom line. Does radical empathy scale financially?
The answer is a mathematically resounding yes. The ROI, the return on investment of empathy, is highly measurable. The sources reference extensive Gallup data to prove this. Gallup found that a fully engaged customer, defined as someone who has experienced these proactive, highly empathetic wow moments and feels an emotional connection to the brand, spends 23% more than a standard satisfied customer.
Wait, 23% more just because they feel an emotional connection, not because the product is physically superior?
Correct. Satisfaction is purely transactional. It means the vending machine worked. Engagement is relational. It means they trust you. Furthermore, when employee engagement rises by just 4%, which happens when you empower them with trust and rid them of blame, it translates to roughly $40 million in incremental revenue for the brand.
Wow.
Empathy isn't a soft charity expense. It is a massive compounding revenue driver.
But if a company manages to master this, if they crack the code on internal culture, radical trust, and customer engagement to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, what happens next? Usually, a company hoards that secret. But Ritz-Carlton took a very different path. How do you scale a philosophy like this beyond the literal walls of a hotel?
You establish an institution dedicated entirely to brand extension and external education. When Ritz-Carlton won the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, which is an incredibly rigorous presidential honor that they actually won twice.
Twice, wow.
Yeah, one of the unique stipulations of accepting the award is a mandate to share your successful practices with the wider economic community.
To raise the tide for all boats.
Exactly. That requirement birthed the Ritz-Carlton Leadership Center. They essentially packaged their cultural architecture and opened up their playbook to the public. They began consulting for hospitals, retail chains, and financial institutions.
The most fascinating case study of this in our sources involves Citibank in Singapore. Citibank realized they had a severe service culture problem within their banking operations. Their internal metrics, specifically their voice of employee scores, or VOE, were languishing down in the low 70s.
Right.
Employee morale was stagnant and customer service was suffering. So they hired the Ritz-Carlton Leadership Center to come in and audit their banking staff.
Try to picture the sheer arrogance and initial resistance in that room. You have a room full of veteran, highly compensated financial wealth managers in Singapore. And management tells them that a team of hotel workers is coming in to teach them how to do their jobs.
I can hear the cynicism. Why are the people who fold towels and make beds auditing the people who manage global wealth portfolios?
The friction was intense. But Ritz-Carlton didn't walk in and try to teach them banking regulations. They taught them the architecture of alignment. They helped Citibank implement their own version of the daily lineup to break down the silos between the tellers and the executives. They helped them draft their own credo card with 15 core values specific to banking.
They introduced the behavioral rituals that build psychological safety and customer obsession, and the results speak for themselves. Within a year of implementing these hotel tactics, the veteran bankers who were initially scoffing at the idea were surveyed again. They stated it was the most impactful training of their professional lives. Citibank's voice of employee scores shot up from the dismal 70s into the high 80s.
What we are observing in that Citibank engagement is the fundamental difference between a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset. The vast majority of businesses operate in pure scarcity. They believe their operational advantages are fragile, proprietary secrets that must be guarded and hoarded.
Right, like if I teach my competitor how to be nice to customers, I lose my edge.
Exactly. But Ritz-Carlton realized that their culture isn't a secret formula locked in a vault. It is a muscle. It requires daily exercise. By actively teaching their methods to other businesses, even in entirely different industries like finance or healthcare, they are actively raising the global bar for service.
And in a highly interconnected global economy, elevating the standard of human interaction everywhere ultimately benefits their own employees and their own customers.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean? If we step back from the $2,000 rules and the 14 interviews and look at the whole picture, moving from that cold transactional vending machine to a deeply relationship-based business isn't actually about luxury at all. You don't need marble floors, crystal chandeliers, or high-end linens to do what they do.
No, the physical luxury is secondary. It is about the architecture of empathy.
It is about clearly defining your values so they aren't ambiguous. It is about the brutal discipline of radical daily alignment to combat human forgetfulness. It is about selecting your team for raw, innate empathy rather than just hiring a resume for technical skill.
Yes.
It is about possessing the organizational humility to evolve past your own rigid rules when they become robotic. And above all, it is about trusting the people at the very bottom of your organizational chart with actual tangible power to do the right thing in the moment.
Once that architecture is built and the trust is proven, it is incredibly difficult for any competitor to dismantle. Faster and cheaper will always exist, but genuine empathy is nearly impossible to replicate without the foundation.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as you go back to your own teams, your own businesses, or even your own personal relationships. We've talked a lot about corporate budgets today, but let's make it personal. Think about a key relationship in your life right now, maybe a client, a coworker, or even a family member. If you were handed $2,000 of untethered, unquestioned trust today, specifically to solve a friction point or anticipate a totally unexpressed need for that person without having to ask anyone for permission, what would you do? And how would that single proactive act of radical empathy change the dynamic of your relationship with them forever?
It's a profound challenge. The capacity for that kind of legendary impact is already sitting dormant in your organization or in your own life. It simply requires the courage and the trust to unleash it.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.